Welcome to another episode of Fault Lines. I'm Gauri Dwivedi. This week we tell you whether or not there is the possibility of a peace formula as far as Russia-Ukraine war is concerned. Is that even possible? And what could that formula be? We tell you more on that. Next on the show, we give you details about China's bogus Arunachal Pradesh claim, one that is impeding any progress that the two sides have made in the last couple of months. Direct flight connectivity has started, but Arunachal Pradesh and such claims really do huge damage to the bilateral relationship. But last, we tell you what is that big $40 billion plan that Taiwan has come up with to deter dragon in its neighborhood. Viewers, on to our top focus this week on Fault Lines. Over in Eurasia, a war is edging towards crossroads, and a peace deal is caught in the crossfire of global ambition, battlefield pressure, and political urgency. For months, the world has watched Ukraine as peace options have come up, only to fall apart. This as Russia presses for concessions that Kyiv maintains would carve up its future. Now, as American envoys shuttle between Moscow, Kyiv and Abu Dhabi, the question isn't just whether a deal can be reached, but whether the deal on the table can hold under the weight of mistrust that's been baked in since 2014. Negotiators describe progress, leaders hint at possibilities, but beneath the diplomatic calm, fault lines widen. Territory, troop limits, NATO aspirations. These are issues too large, too emotional, too defining to bend easily. Let's break down what has and hasn't changed so far, and more importantly, why the next decisions may shape Europe's security for a generation. Let's begin with taking stock of what has changed between 2014 and now, and why there are red lines on both sides. Let's put that out. First and foremost, what all has Russia taken control of? First and most important is the Crimean region that was annexed way back in 2014. In fact, that was that is how Russia actually was asked to exit from G8. It was the Crimean annexation when Putin was asked to leave. Next up, Donbas conflict has frozen the lines that exist, and both sides say that they are not willing to concede even an inch here. Donbas is a Russian-speaking area, which Russia says is actually now theirs. Next up, local proxies have actually gained control. They are now more powerful in the area, and that also complicates matters in terms of being able to find any sort of a solution to end this war. Next, the Russian troops' presence has escalated. Now, what does this mean? It means that there is a military momentum going in favor of Russia right now, something that Ukraine and its European allies cannot ignore, given that so much has already been lost on both sides. A full-scale invasion redraws front. That's a reality that all politicians, all leaders on all sides are fully aware of. Ukrainian counteroffensives have also reclaimed ground. There have also been a lot of drone attacks that have come in. In fact, even now in the last 24 hours, Russia has said that 56 unmanned drones it has been able to shoot down. A lot of this is the counteroffensive that is coming in from the Ukrainian side. Moscow has fortified the occupied regions, the regions that it managed to gain control of very early into the conflict when it started, believe it or not, in February 2022. Kyiv has secured Western guarantees. There's also been a fresh IMF loan that it has got to be able to rebuild some of its economy, even as Ukraine is now looking to push ahead in terms of producing some of its air defenses on its own. All of this requires money that it is getting right now. Those European funding lines are on, but battlefield remains fiercely contested, and that needs to be understood in its entirety, because there are people there, there are lives at stake, all of which are getting lost for every minute that is lost when a peace deal is not being finalized. Now, so after more than a decade of shifting these borders, drone skies, and a battlefield that refuses viewers to stay still, the question facing negotiators whether the peace proposal will be allowed to stand tomorrow. Territory has changed hands, loyalties have hardened, and alliances have deepened. This report takes you straight inside those talks, the sticking points, and the three possible outcomes that could define the future of the region and possibly the world.
For the first time since the full-scale invasion, negotiators say they are within reach of a framework. It's not a final peace, but the scaffolding for one. Behind closed doors in Geneva, Abu Dhabi, Kyiv and Moscow, diplomats sift through words that carry the weight of entire nations. 3 sticking points, each as heavy as the war itself. And now, the 3 possible endings negotiators are gaming out. Outcome 1, Ukraine and Russia accept a realignment. One that could freeze the conflict, codify new borders, reduce attacks, and open the doors to reconstruction. But it comes with compromises both sides will struggle to sell at home. Outcome 2, Ukraine accepts, Russia rejects. The war continues, but with Moscow isolated diplomatically. The scenario could bring heavier sanctions, more Western weapons to Kyiv, and a longer grind with no clear off-ramp. And finally, outcome 3, both reject. Talks collapse, attacks intensify, winter becomes a weapon again. And the war, already redefining European security, deepens into a prolonged standoff with unpredictable consequences. Across Ukraine, people hope, fear and wait. Across Russia, the Kremlin weighs gains against risks, pressures against legitimacy. And across Western capitals, the urgency is real. In the corridors of international diplomacy, deals often end wars. But only strong deals keep them from returning.
Burzeen Wagmar, who's the Center for Iranian Studies, SOS, at the University of London, joins me live on the broadcast. Let me start by asking you, Mr. Wagmar, what are your expectations out of yet another attempt for a peace deal? Steve Witkoff likely to speak to President Putin. How optimistic are you?
Not very optimistic. The only silver lining to the cloud is that this 28-point plan that was proposed last week is now shelved, thankfully, which is practically dictated in Moscow with Putin's maximalist demands, and has been now replaced by what is known as a 19-point plan, which has gained critical mass. Following talks in Geneva between Andrei Yermak, who's of the Ukrainian head of presidential office, and Secretary Marco Rubio, followed by secret talks in Abu Dhabi on Monday night between Army Secretary Driscoll and Kirilo Budanov, that is the Ukrainian Military Intelligence Directorate's head. What we now are envisaging is the following as such, that the automatic veto on NATO membership has gone. No Western troops to be stationed permanently in Ukraine, which was forwarded by Putin adamantly, is going to be vaguely put out. It's not going to be an all-out ban for all times. Putin will have to live with that aspect. Then there's the question of full amnesty for war crimes has been shelved. That has been scrapped completely from the original 28-point peace plan. And then the sticking point and the sore point is, of course, Donbass, for which Ukrainians have paid blood and money for over 11 years. The question is, Ukraine has said that it will continue pursuing it through diplomatic means in order to, overcome the occupation. So that has been put forward so far. And Ursula von der Leyen, the commissioner chief in Strasbourg, mentioned also this week on the question of reparations. 185 billion pounds worth of assets of Moscow are frozen, as we know. And that is being dragged because Belgium has brought up the fact that should we pursue it to the fullest, Moscow could mount legal challenges. And then there's the worry also that ultimately European taxpayers would have to shoulder it. But an options paper with legal documentation is to be put out by the EU around late December. So we have to see as to what pans out on that as well.
All right, Mr. Wagmar, hold your thought there. You've highlighted some of those important points in the 19-point formula that's been put up on the table. but comes in the backdrop of Russia very clearly saying that there's only little room for negotiations. They have their red lines and they've told those red lines to negotiators much in advance. So what are we really then looking at?
We're looking at the fact that the maximalist demands from the 28-point plan, which is practically dictated in Moscow and okayed by President Trump, is not going to be pursued to the fullest. So Russia may put a brave face, as Dmitry Peskov has been doing, and says that it's premature to talk about any peace plan. But he's got a point there. It is premature because obviously the Europeans are not going to completely cave in, since their peace is completely in peril too. Because the fact is that Moscow still looks upon Europe, never mind Ukraine, as a sphere of influence.
Finally, then I want to ask you this, that there are deal breakers on both sides. And that is essentially Donbass. And that is essentially the territory that has come under Russian occupation, under Russian control since 2022. How are negotiators really going to solve this? How is Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son really going to solve that?
But they're not, because they're completely out of their depth. All they have been doing is taking dictation from Putin, as I mentioned, the maximalist demands. And Mr. Witkoff has also been known to actually manipulate Russian negotiators in how to speak favorably and press for a better position for Moscow towards and how to play Mr. Trump, literally, his own boss. That has been leaked in a video, as we've seen in the last few hours. So that goes to show that Mr. Witkoff's standing is very, very questionable. And quite frankly, he's been an abysmal negotiator.
So if I am, let's say, somebody in the European capital, either in London or in Paris or in Berlin, looking at how these parleys are going on, I want to be part of it, even as the writing is on the wall that very little is actually going to come out of it. So what can some of these European allies do to end the war?
That is a blunt point to be stated right away, Gauri, in that the Europeans have been blindsided throughout these recent talks, be it in Abu Dhabi or Geneva. That is a fact where they have, been not added up to much. Despite discussions at the G20 summit in South Africa between the German Chancellor and the British Prime Minister, at least something has come of it, in that we've had some pushback, some talking points given to Zelensky, which is why we've seen the 28-point plan now shelved and revised with this 19-point plan. But still, it is a very ugly deal, which will see Ukraine whittled off and its sovereignty very much questionable in times to come.
All right, Mr. Bagmar, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks much for speaking to me on Fault Lines. Well, viewers, if you take off your blinkers to see how things are unraveling right now, there are multiple parleys that are taking place. Transatlantic efforts to end this war have expedited. Everybody wants to be on Donald Trump's right side because they want to extract the best possible deal, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's the European allies, whether it's Russian President Vladimir Putin himself. But the fact is, Moscow has drawn those red lines very deep, leaving little room for negotiation, which means that even if Trump is on your side, he may not have an answer on how to end this war, at least not immediately. Turning attention now to the second focus this week. Just 2 months after a diplomatic thaw at the SCO summit, over 24 rounds of commander-level talks, continuous engagements. After all of that, the chill is back in the Himalayas. China's unfounded, legally untenable claims over Arunachal Pradesh have resurfaced in new forms. Renaming sprees, objections to Indian citizens, stapling their passports, a standard procedure that China has been doing for years now, and now a revived border rhetoric yet again. Beijing's pattern of provocation continues despite diplomacy. We unpack the history, the legality, and why this recurring Arunachal Pradesh problem refuses to fade, and how this is likely to overshadow the India-China relationship. But first up, this report that brings you up to speed with why this is central to the New Delhi-Beijing equation.
Negotiations on paper and tensions on the ground have long shaped India-China relations. Even during phases of diplomatic warmth, China's posture on Arunachal Pradesh has followed a familiar historical pattern. Over the years, reports of Chinese officials questioning local grazers and echoes of the old stapled passport era reflected a consistent effort to challenge the region's identity. A clear approach rooted in a much older playbook. Beijing has leaned on selective history for decades now. It repeatedly invokes bogus monastic links and vintage maps to claim what modern law never granted. India's objections have a long record. 2009, China issues stapled visas to Arunachal residents. 2011, Beijing blocks 2 Indian sportspersons from the Asian Karate Championships over their Arunachal domicile. 2017, China protests the Dalai Lama's visit to Taiwan, reviving its historical claims. Arunachal has long been a living, inalienable Indian state. China's fabricated and misleading narrative has had no impact on the ground.
Viewers, China's latest moves are nothing but yet another effort that have been countered by India firmly. And I'm now going to walk you through what all has happened repeatedly in the last few years and why this is likely to be yet another thorn that both sides will have to negotiate, and diplomacy will have to once again play a lot of role. First and foremost, one-sided confrontation that took place after the SCO thaw. Surprise escalation after the Tianjin SCO meeting that took place between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping. This was the first time that the PM travelled to China in 7 years. After the Wuhan spirit, all of which then gets dampened by what happened to the Indian citizen from Arunachal Pradesh. Next up, the staple visas for Arunachal Pradesh citizens and residents. The residents there face this on a very regular basis. Now, why is this important? Because it means that China wants to continue make this an issue again and again and again. And repeatedly, stapled visas have been issued to individuals from Arunachal Pradesh, even as India has absolutely made it clear. Arunachal Pradesh is an inalienable part of India and will remain so always. Next up, let's get you the other aspect in terms of we are putting out that pattern of provocation from the Chinese side. Renaming spree of locations in Arunachal Pradesh. Randomly, several locations in Arunachal Pradesh have been renamed and given Chinese names. One fine day, it just happened. Chinese names were given to all those cities and prominent areas in Arunachal Pradesh. Again, to prove a point and lead that entire provocative behavior that India has been calling out again and again, and behavior that actually comes back to haunt the relationship, which is moving forward but gets pulled back because of these provocative gestures. Objections to Indian leaders visiting Arunachal Pradesh. Frequently, whenever Indian leaders, prominent politicians, thought leaders have travelled to Arunachal Pradesh, there's been a voice that has come in from China. They've in fact registered protests. Can you believe it, viewers? Arunachal Pradesh is a part of India. Indians are going and travelling there. Anybody is free to go to any part of this country. Who is China to tell us anything? But this again is that pattern of provocation that we are telling you about. And lastly, blocking international platforms over Arunachal Pradesh residents. Previously blocked Arunachal Pradesh athletes and officials from events and conferences. Again, this is a pattern. They're telling that they are trying to put that view across forward again and again, and they choose those prominent events, prominent sporting events to prove that point. And which is why this is so important for you to understand how things have been going as far as China is concerned. Now, viewers, we've told you why this is important. But let's now understand one thing. Direct flight connectivity between India and China started in October, just about 4 weeks back. They were suspended post the Galwan clash, where China unilaterally attacked Indian soldiers. It has taken them so long to move forward. Since then, several other series of steps have been taken to move towards normalization, resumption of Mansarovar Yatra, commemoration of 75 years of bilateral ties, several others. But the underlying trust deficit remains. These measures can continue, But how do you address the trust deficit? And for that, Beijing is solely responsible. Raising Arunachal Pradesh again and again shows China will always remain a challenge and an adversary for India, one with which a trust deficit is unlikely to ever be addressed. On that note, viewers, we're slipping into a very short break. We come back on the other side, tell you more about that big plan that Taiwan has come up with to counter Dragon in its backyard. Stay with us. I'm now going to tell you what exactly is it that Taiwan is doing to save itself from the Dragon. It's unveiled a $40 billion defense boost, launched the Taiwan Dome, Air Shield, which is with an 8-year security push amidst the growing threat that has come in from the Chinese side to ensure that it can stand up to the growing threats that have come in from China. And in fact, a major share of the funds that will come in will go towards developing the Taiwan Dome, an advanced air defense system designed for high precision detection and rapid interception of threats. The budget, spread over 8 years from 2026 to 2033, aligns with Taiwan's broader push to raise the defense expenditure to 5% of its GDP, reflecting Taipei's efforts to boost deterrence as America urges stronger self-defense capabilities. Take a look.
2026到2033年。
In a bold move, Taiwan has unveiled a sweeping new defense plan worth $40 billion. A clear signal that the island intends to shield itself from a rising challenge. Under the leadership of Lai Ching-te, Taiwan aims to transform its military strength. The plan will fund new arms purchases, including advanced missiles, drones, and air defense upgrades to counter what Taipei calls an unprecedented threat from China. Central to the plan, the creation of a multi-layered air defense shield, dubbed T-Dome, designed to intercept missiles, drones, or aircraft that may threaten Taiwan's skies. A strategic move to raise the cost of any potential aggression. This decision comes amid an uptick in Chinese military pressure, regular airspace incursions, naval maneuvers, grey zone tactics, and political signaling. For Taiwan, the message is clear. Deterrence must now be backed by tangible defense capability. With this defense budget, Taiwan is not just building systems, it's building resolve. Whether Beijing proceeds down a path of pressure or aggression, Taipei is signaling it won't stand still. The stakes for peace in the Indo-Pacific just got higher.
Viewers, that's all the time we have in this edition of Fault Lines. Thanks so much for watching. We come back next week with yet another conflict, yet another war zone decoded for you to tell you the story behind the war zone. Thanks for watching.